Hello everybody and welcome to another PmP end of month video review. So what is this? Well, the PmP is the Painters Motivating Painters. It's our online Facebook community where we allow users to post in a monthly event one model for feedback from myself and other members of the community who will come on here with me occasionally, and we will review. So the basic idea is for people to provide specific questions, areas where they want to improve, where they want to take their next step. And then we give feedback as to, what they can do to help achieve that. The goal with the entire community is to help you on your painting journey, to help you take your next step wherever you happen to be, whether you're just starting out or a master. And because we all have our own personal next step to take. So it's a constructive, positive community, all about sharing our art together and giving each other a hand and taking our next step. If you're interested in joining, you can, of course, click down below. You'll see in the description of this video, there is a link. You can click that. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to go through this month, and I'll actually show you how you can access this from the main page. Okay, so if we come back here to the PmP, when I'm on the main site here, we see our normal stuff. You'll notice at the beginning of every month, Kieran posts up a new event. This is where the September submissions go. But you can access any event anytime by going here to the events tab, and you'll see there's a long list of all the events. So I'll come in here to the August review, since that's what I'm doing. If I wanted to make a post, you could, of course, just post in here, and you're good to go. Like right here, I could just post and add a photo, and there it is. That's how you put it in for review. So with that being said, I am still getting over a cold here. I do apologize for the lateness of this review. When I came back from Nova, I got really, really sick with some con crud, and it's still up there. You can probably hear it a little bit. So I may have to pause occasionally. I'll try my best to keep this edited down so you're not dealing with that. As I always say, there is a source video where I explain a lot of the things I talk about. The most common things that I give feedback on are all in a source video where I walk you through using a couple of my models exactly what I mean. So I'll say things like more contrast, or you need to work on the NMM, or whatever. And I have videos where I reference all of that stuff and walk you through it. That's also in the description. So the reason for that is because I would love to spend a lot of time on everybody's piece, but there's a lot of submissions. And I don't mind doing this I love doing this actually, but life is life, and I don't have 5 or 6 hours to sit here and go through everybody's thing. So I do have to be brief, and focused feedback is always appreciated. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump on into it here. So we start off with Alex Weir, who's really looking for feedback on his Sequitur Prime. It won Ever Chosen his local store, and he's keen for feedback on non-metallic metal. Sure. So my basic advice here to you, Alex, is some of this needs to be a little stronger in contrast. Usually the main piece of feedback. Your yellow is still pretty subtle. You could also bring up the midtone a little, so a little more rich ochre in the midtone. Just to lay down a piece of verbiage I'm going to use here, I'll often talk in terms of midtone, highlight, and shade. And in general, there are 5. The easiest way to think about it is there are 5 color spectrums. 1 is your highlight, 3 is your midtone, and 5 is your shade, your darkest color. So hence 2 is halfway between the highlight and the midtone, and 4 is halfway between the midtone and the shade. So if I say you need to up your 2, that just means you're near midtone. And that's exactly what you would do here. You need to saturate your midtone a little more, like your 2, 3. Looking through it, I think that's the main piece of feedback. I like the reflected light. I think that's good. Your edges are all nice and sharp. This back one looks really good here because you can see you ran the full gamut of the contrast, where I've got some nice deep colors coming up to a nice white. But again, some more saturation of the 2, 3 yellows would really help there. I think that's probably my biggest piece of feedback for you. It's a really nice piece. It's very clean. It does not surprise me that it won the store. It looks really great. Just other things you can do are, things like when you've got a big piece of white like this on the cloak, you can add a little thing there to spice that up a little bit, just like you did here with your line. I think that looks good. A similar thing here would look nice. But with a non-metallic, a little more contrast. Now, reference material, go look at like Flame On Miniatures has really great stuff as far as hitting that contrast on non-metallic metal. If you want to look more on shapes and stuff, obviously Cujo painting has a great thing. But this is a super great piece. I just think you need to pop your contrast up a little bit and saturate. Okay. Let's see. So Caspian painted some Shadespire orcs, wants to know about weathering and the green skin. Yeah, so let's take a look here at this picture, because this will give us a nice image. So for the weathering, I mean, my answer would be to be a little more intentional about what you're doing. Like, you're kind of, it's very dirty in a way that doesn't necessarily feel weathered. Like, you still want all the parts to be nice and separated. So like when you've got these rivets, you want to watch for like silver getting up on other areas where it shouldn't be, stuff like that. You want to avoid any kind of scratches that are just alone, or look, sort of avoid these edges that are kind of showing metallics. I think in general, you want them to be a little more steel or rusted or something like that. Just gray chipping it is usually a nice way to go. When it comes to your brown, which is meant to be like a rusted out effect, you should go watch my video on battle damage, where I walk you through like these kinds of things should be edged very cleanly, so it shows where it's kind of chipped away, and you want like a light blue here where the light's catching the edge of the rusted enamel. Things like rusting the screws, and having them come from very logical places. Like, you want it to be, rusting is this weird combination of very careful planning and completely random organic stuff. So what I mean is it needs to be logical in how it's placed, but random in how it is implemented. So things like around the rivets is good. You've got the right idea there. So your placement's good there. But like your scratches and stuff like that should come from the edges. The things that have the most surface area exposure will generally, or encounter the most contact with other surfaces, will weather and rust the fastest. So you want to look for things like elbows and edges here and stuff like that. So scratches running down. This is, I think, really good. So like that's really nice. This area under here would ostensibly not actually be very dirty, because it's protected by his head. It's in the center of his body. I mean, other than this would be a nice thing to build some rust out from, where he's got this deep scratch. And then that's then led to exposed surface area, chip through the enamel, and so there'd be rust coming out from here, from these edges, just stuff like that. As to the green skin, I think it looks really nice. You have a good mix of tones here. This guy looks really nice. Maybe a little more reds into some areas could do you well. Really, it's just a matter of like, you want to make sure all this stuff is nice and sharp around here. And maybe you could do a glaze or two more of green to kind of resaturate some of the skin. But honestly, I think the skin looks really good. I don't know that I have a huge amount of feedback for you on that. I think you're in a really good place on the skin. I think this is a nice tonal variation. You've got a lot of different colors. You do have some reds in there, which I talk about all the time. So I really think your skin is quite successful. So there you go. All right, next up we have Alan Thomas with his ever-chosen entry as well, which is this Harlequin Shadowseer. He did get through the store stage, so he's looking for feedback on color composition and balance. Okay. Sounds good. All right. And by the way, 30 hours is not a long time on a competition piece. It's actually a pretty quick time for a competition piece. So well done, especially on one so complicated like this. Like, to be fair, a single miniature competition piece will often take me 50 to 60 hours or something like that. So, or longer, depending on what it is, what the piece is. So don't feel bad about that at all. Now, as to the colors, I think you balance them pretty well. So things like your blue, your bright blue white, you have a nice balance here on his crystal gun, whatever this thing is, over here with the stick. So I think that looks really good. The yellow, you counterbalance around. Obviously, that's the bright color, and we can see how we've got a nice triangle with his gloves. So you're making all the right choices. I think your composition is actually really strong. Your blend through the diamonds all looks really nice. I mean, the places where you would take it up a notch is with stuff like the black, and adding a little more spot highlight to those, making sure the actual black itself has a little more interest, because it's kind of, it is flat compared to a lot of the color variation you're doing elsewhere. Sharpening up the crystals, like going on the edges and taking them to like pure white, so you really get that. It doesn't need to be all the way around, doesn't need to be every edge, but like especially here on these highlights and here where it'd be on this side, kind of like theoretically in light and emanating light, these edges would be really, really, really bright, right? So stuff like that, I think, is probably your main place you want to step it up. But overall, I think this is a really strong entry. I like how you did the diamonds in certain places. You didn't take it everywhere. That is to say, you didn't do it on these his little tassels as well, which I think looks really nice. I think your blends look smooth. The yellow on the gloves, although well placed, is a little flat. So you want to make sure you have some contrast in there as well. Using some subtle brown red tones or something like that, or deeper ochres could be a way to do that, where you're not then making it conflict with this color you've got down here. But I think the yellow is probably the flattest part on the whole miniature, and that's where you've got some more room to grow there. But overall, it's a freaking great looking Harlequin, and I think you did these guys are always tough to balance the colors on. I think you did that admirably. Looks great. All right, so Danny, Loon Boss on Giant Cave Squig. Any suggestions would be appreciated. Sure. So I'm going to actually flip him around to this because this will give me the best way. Somebody had already mentioned in the comments that the edge highlights are very chunky. I agree with that. You either want this to be razor thin or you want to blend it into the cloak. I like the idea of it fading to purple. We just need a couple mid-tone glazes here. So like you went all the way up to your 1 here, and this is your 5, and your 1 and your 5 are like basically right next to each other. I need more transition here. The squig looks nice. My advice would be do more with the squig. Like, that is to say, where he's got all this nice texture and these little dots and stuff, make sure you do, give me some color and some variation around these. Richard Gray is painting one of these guys right now, and obviously he's one of the best painters in the world, so I'm not asking you to try to go replicate his work. But it's a good reference. He's great at picking out detail, adding skin texture. It'll really be a good example of what I'm talking about, and you'll be able to see that kind of stuff in action. My biggest feedback is going to be on the bone. Again, you can reference the video, but we need more striations, more transition. You have way too much of like a just dark line jumping to white. You want a lot more transition, either through a subtle blend or through lines and striations or something like that. We'll really pop that up. But overall, he's a real cool mini. I think he did a nice job. I love the bright yellow. The squig face is sort of the thing that we want to be paying attention to, and you've definitely drawn our eye. At the same time, you very much highlighted the top of the goblin head, so he doesn't disappear. So I think this is really nice work. Yeah, and I love the little angry spider moon at the bottom. That's really cool. All right, Joseph Fernandez experimenting with the couple things, both fluorescent paint and the little UV torch stuff from Green Stuff World, which I am excited to experiment with myself at some point. So my main feedback here is going to be on using these fluorescent paints, as I've used them quite a bit in my own life. And the biggest problem I see with these guys is just the smoothness of the paint. So you want to make sure, and my best advice is we need to smooth some stuff out here. So like things are very hard lines. You still want to make sure everything stays clean in the separation of the elements. And so I think just like painting cleanliness is our biggest challenge. Like here, this is way too rough of a transition. There's some other places where we want to make sure we've got, very thin lines. Like here, our separation lines are way too thick, where it looks like just wash gathered or whatever. You want to make sure you keep that as thin as possible. You want a nice, thin, sharp line. It's much better over on this leg. That kind of stuff. Now, when you're dealing with fluorescents, they're naturally very pigmenty and very dry. I think your effect is great. Like, I like the white hot under the foot and here in the eyes. This looks really cool. Like, you've placed the color in some really interesting places. What we need to do now is smooth it out. And my best advice there is you can't use a fluorescent paint for that because it's just ultimately too chalky. So what I've taken to do is using other pink glazes. War Colors makes a pink glaze that I like a lot for this, but you can use any pink paint and get it into a glaze. And at the edge, at the transition point, you just kind of mix some of that in. You can also add extra medium into your fluorescent if you want. Like if you've got a generic medium, like a master medium or something like that from Green Stuff World. It's a really good product for it. And then that'll help you really smooth those transitions. Same here. I think that's my biggest piece of feedback for you. Overall, this is like a super creative experiment with these two products. And I think it came out really awesome. Like these guys must look just fantastically cool on the tabletop. So I think when you're doing the OSL, my other advice is like on a guy like this, make sure you're paying attention to things like your shadows. Like he's really bright over here, so you want to cast this in a little bit of darker sheen because it's behind him and there's no direct light on it. But I really like your catch of the reflected lights. Like you're doing really well with the direct reflected lights of the pink. I think you've got a really good handle on that. We really just need to sharpen and clean. It's just a refinement process at this point. But again, these are for like basically a board game, so I don't know if maybe that's work you weren't willing, didn't want to do, which would be completely understandable because that's time you probably didn't want to spend, and that's fair. But they look awesome, really cool stuff. I'm very excited to do that myself, to play with the new UV sensitive shaper stuff. All right, Alexandre. says he looking for composition, true metallic metal. All right. So, yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, it's good. You've got a lot of nice elements going on. I think we need to smooth a little more. I wonder if you're using a rattle can primer or something like that, because some of it looks a little rough. Some of the inks look a little strong. You want to make sure you're still taking, like, I would ask, what metal paints are you using? Drop me down in the comments and tell me that if you watch this, Alexandre. Because some of it just looks a little rough, and we want to get more, like, what we want to do is really get more mixes of the paint plus ink sort of mixture in there to kind of smooth it out. The rattle can primer can also be very bumpy with smooth metallics. But overall, I think this is nice. Like, you've got a good handle on what you're shading. I think you could go up a little farther, like, you know, with edges, making sure your silver is really popped out. Especially, like, you got it nice up here. I think more here and here, like down on the feet, you know, really creating those edge lines. On the gold, it looks really dirty. So you may want to think about going back over that with some of the gold. If you're using what I use, then you're using Vallejo metal color, so you can definitely thin it out. But like stuff like this, where we see these hard lines, we want to make sure you have some kind of paint ink mixture where you're more separating that up, cleaning it up. And then same with the gold, you want that to still come up to like a near silver for its highlights as well. And watch stuff like the top of the hammer, make sure this has its nice highlights on it, things like that. But overall, he's good looking Stormcast. I like the extra touches you put on the shield of the damage and scratches. Those are cool. Your color composition is good. So, you know, I think you're in a real good place. I think this is a great foundation to build your Stormcast forest around. All right. So, Eddie. So I read through this earlier. Basically, he's trying to replicate a hologram. All right. So, fair enough. I mean, yeah, I think the answer here really, Eddie, is we just need more finish. You mentioned that you were pressed for time. And the light effect is going to really throw things for a wobble. So let's just look at it with this. Because whenever we bring real lights into things, things get complicated. You know, making her appear translucent is a challenge I'm not sure I honestly know how to answer. But what I can say is that I definitely, like, it feels very airbrushed right now. And, like, we'll look at this picture, and this one really shows it off. So, like, what I think you need is much more separation of the various elements. I'm not sure what... I honestly don't have a great answer for you with how to make something look translucent like this. I would love to community source this. If there's anybody who has a good idea or who's seen a video on painting something to be faux translucent, I would very much love to see it. It's just a hard effect to pull off because things, like, it's a solid object, and it's going to be very difficult to get us to read otherwise. Things like it reflecting light, the way this is satin, is going to definitely break that effect. Okay, that's number one. So you want to make sure that gets cut. Like, all this satin effect is going to ruin it, because if it's reflecting light, it's obviously a solid object. The second thing I would say is you want to be careful with something looking overtly airbrushed like this. Like, the detail just isn't here. Like, her hair would still theoretically have these things shaded and stuff like that. These lines probably would be darker, things like that. So, you know, that's sort of my general advice, is to kind of push that. I mean, yeah, you look at the reference photo with the hologram, she's sort of lit from below, but I mean, I can also see Master Chief through her. And, you know, that's kind of what makes us see a hologram. The other thing that holograms tend to have that the video artists add back in are these lines, right? That doesn't need to be there. Like, this is something that the CGI person added in, right? They purposefully put these lines in there because that sort of tricks our brain into thinking it's not real and it's a hologram. I guess you could try to replicate something like that, like these horizontal lines, but woof, that's going to be a tall order. One thing I will say is that it comes to very, very bright white reflective points, right? And so, like, just in general, I would push that way, way up. Like, if you're really going for that, then she needs to have the same just, like, overwhelming glow. But it's a tough challenge, Eddie. I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure I have the best overall advice for you. But I do think, as you mentioned in your comments, separating the elements would be better. I think popping the highlights up. I think desaturating everything might help, because the reference photo is very, like, she has no real color to her. It's all, like, very, very, very desaturated color. So, just some thoughts. But that's a tough challenge you push for yourself. So I'll be interested to see if you continue to develop her. All right, Andy Walker. All right, Andy, so here's the trick. You want to enter this in Resin Beast in 2020. And I am one of the judges for Resin Beast, okay? So I don't really feel good about giving you feedback in detail because I feel like all of the competitors would not have a chance to come to one of the judges for feedback. So in the interest of fairness, I can't give you detailed feedback. I will say the dragon looks very nice. And my one piece of feedback that I will give that I know is okay is to say, you said you're using a writer from Hassle Free Miniatures. Do please go check with the contest guidelines as they're posted. If that's legit, if you're allowed to use other third-party miniatures as part of your composition. I'm not saying you aren't. I'm saying I don't know. Or reach out to CreatureCaster directly to Peter or somebody, because they will be able to tell you. Because I would hate to see you get pulled or something happen where, you know, that happens at that stage, okay? But very cool dragon, and I very, very, very much hope to see it at the... I hope to judge this piece next year. I would encourage you to go to other members of the community who aren't the judges for it and get as much feedback as you can. So, sorry, man. Okay. Next up, Andrew Wade with his Dogma 48 project. This is such a fascinating thing. Basically, you've got 48 hours to make a competition-level project. This is such a wonderful take. Like, Andrew is such an artist. I, of course, jumped to the picture that I can't cycle that way from. You can see this is a bust. When you look at it straight on, it doesn't feel like that. This is such a beautiful piece, Andrew. To do this in 48 hours, I mean, I have no feedback to give you. You achieved something absolutely miraculous. I love the carry through of the art. I think this is inspired. I really just wanted to stop on this to share with people. I want everybody to really look at the colors he's using. Like the reds in the shadows of the blue. It's absolutely magnificent. Your skin tone is rich. Your blue is wonderful. The scene you've set him in is fantastic. I love everything about this. And the color, the carry through of the color, like working blues up onto here. This stuff is all just so well executed. Beautiful project, beautiful execution, Andrew. A true piece of art, man. This is absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, really wonderful. Really, really wonderful. All right, so let's keep going. All right, next up, Radislaw brings us a this great Sister of Battle that was from the first one they released. And he says, constant struggle with black armor. Yeah, I hate black armor too. I really hate it. So, you know, I get it. It's it's pretty terrible. Excuse me. Okay. So, I mean, I have a couple videos on doing black armor. There's a couple ways you can cheat. You can place really over accentuated highlights. And this is probably my favorite way to do black armor. You place really over accentuated highlights in sort of blue and white into the black. And so like you would do it, this will be a great place to show it. So like we would do it here, we would do it here on the top of her backpack here, and you know, whatever, right? And then what you do is you just take some, like I use a mix of Payne's Gray and black ink from Daler-Rowney. And you just glaze the whole thing. Not wash, glaze the whole thing back down, covering all your highlights. And you do it like 4 times. Or if you're really strong with your airbrush, you can do it with your airbrush. And then it slowly just fades all the colors in together. That's probably my best advice for a cheat. But yeah, I mean, that's the answer. You got to pop that stuff out more. Other tricks on this you can do is stuff like make her corset a different color, so that way it kind of stands out more. You know, you can remove black elements. Like, you know, there's lots of different color schemes, and in the end, it's all your own. So like, you know, you can make things like the skulls and the edges and these recessed parts and her greaves and all these kinds of things. You know, make them a different color. That way the black stands out a little more, and you have less of the black to fight with. So stuff like that's probably my best advice. Try the glaze trick. See how you like it. It's a good method I found for getting a really organic blend. that isn't just slowly, slowly, slowly blending it over hours, because you're trying to go from black to white. So you're literally making like the widest value change you can do, which is why black armor is awful. My solution is generally just don't paint black. My Sisters of Battle will not be in black armor. I'll tell you that much for sure. All right, next up we got Lee Ascroft. Yeah, welcome back, Lee. So starting off with his first non-pink force. Tentacles and boils and stuff like that. Yeah, I like Death Guard. Let's talk about it, man. So my best advice is on the green, take it a little farther. Give me some more highlights, some more shadows, maybe a little interference color in there. Work like a slight orange tinge into the shadows, into your number 4, right? So your mid to low. That can be an interesting way to make green a little more interesting. As far as the tentacles and the boils and stuff go, yeah, I mean, I think you're all right. You do just want to run more of a wider tonal variation with them. So like, I don't have any other pictures, so this is it. With stuff like when we look up here or these tentacle things, I haven't done this exact model, but I've done plenty of Death Guard. And, you know, I think the tentacles are really fun. They're a fun chance to experiment with those colors you love, purple and pink and flesh tones. And that's the key. Use flesh tones to highlight. And then, you know, you can just work in all sorts of other colors. My general strategy with them is to like wet blend a bunch of like medium Caucasian flesh into purple and just get a nice rotation of that going. And then I go back and add some texture. Like a lot of stippling and stuff can make tentacles look really good. Organic things tend to have texture like that. So you can just like I'll stipple in some very tight flesh tone dots just all over the thing to make it look kind of infected and grody. And then I'll just glaze over it with some pink and it brings them right in the line. So stuff like that's a fun trick. You may want to give that a try. And see what you think. I like the base. Love the dumping out toxin little pipe use here. I think that's super fun. So yeah, I mean, Death Guard are fun. I'm excited to see you continue experimenting. Those would be my 2 main pieces of feedback for you. All right, next up, Sebastian Kemmer. This one's for one of his upcoming army projects. And he was focused on fast rather than high completion. This is the only mini with a flag, and the first flag he ever did. He wants some feedback on the flag. Okay, cool. My answer is I think you did just fine. I think the flag looks good. I think you did manage to capture, you know, your main concern, as is all these things when you've got this kind of fabric that has these folds, is are you capturing the shadows? With goblins, you know, you got a big number of them to paint. It could easily be 120 or 180 depending on your army or something, you know. So I'm not going to bust your chops over like, oh, you need to do a lot more on the goblin. I get it. Speed paint, heard. Honestly, I think you got the flag. You could do a little more. Like you could make the eye a different color. You could make the teeth a slightly different color just to kind of make things interesting and run those in a different transition. But I think you got it. I think you managed to get the shading. I think this looks good. One piece of advice is when you've got these little like threads holding broken banners together, do make sure they're dark lined around the edge, and you want to use something a little more brown white. You don't want it to be quite so white. It's a little stark and it will stand out too much. If you have them dark lined around the edge with like a nice blue-black ink, and then you use kind of a brown white, it'll feel more organic and in line with something, especially a little goblin man who's probably not using the finest, cleanest string to hold his banner together. But cool stuff. I think you did a great job capturing those shadows. All right. Richard Joshua, he says he's had this figure primed for about 12 months, hadn't decided the colors. Went to AdeptCon and talked to me, and what hit him home was doing more. His models need to show more. Okay, so let's take a look. So I think you came out really well with this. Yeah, you're definitely living that lifestyle. You're showing me more. So I'm so happy to see that feedback landed. Because, and let's all take a look and understand what he's doing here, which is stuff like this. So we look and we see how all the freehand he's done on the robe, the coloration and variation on the sword. By the way, don't do these lines. I know why you're doing these. I think a lot of people like to do these. They don't look good. I get what you're trying to capture here. The better answer to that is to just do dots. You do a heavy dot here and here and here. I guarantee you the dot will look a lot better. If you're going to do a line, it has to be fezzed, because light lines like you're trying to capture aren't stark white amongst nothing. They're faded, right? So like that is to say there should be less white, like, you know, white to blue and white to purple here, and like they're not stark lines. Now dots, light reflection points, those are just dots, just a slide aside. But adding the extra like even little touches like here on the leather bracers and stuff, yeah, man. The face mask, this is great. You've got really great tonal variation on the teal. I love that. You know, I'm all about that. Good color choice. I think the biggest thing you want to look at is here on the back when you've got these kinds of freehands, make sure you go back and clean them up with the white. Some of your flowers aren't quite even. These kinds of ceremonial outfits, especially for like a samurai, need to be very precise. So when you do freehand, it has to be like, the trick with freehand isn't just drawing the thing, it's erasing. Okay? Like, and I talk about this a lot in my freehand videos. It's not just drawing the thing, it's then coming back with this color, the white, and then cleaning up the thing, right? So you don't just draw the thing, you erase the thing. Good freehand uses both drawing and erasing as part of the refinement process, repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly. So yeah, that's my only piece of feedback there. But this is fantastic. Now on the base, you've got him on a little plinth, so I assume maybe he wants to be some kind of competition piece. Please do something with his base. I hope this isn't done, because this needs a lot more. This is not doing anything for me. It's just gray stone. I need color. I need action. I need little plants. I need moss. I need this to be something. Like, make this be something, okay? Because right now it's just blank stone. You've got wonderful variation and interest going on up here, and then just nothing here. So take that up. This is doing great. So excellent work overall. I'm so happy to see this kind of work in progress, this kind of work in the progress of your journey. I understand that you're probably done with this mini, and I think he looks really wonderful. All right. Next up, Jared. All right. So the sword in particular, he can't seem to get the non-metallic metal neat. The white seems too hard to get a midline with. The model is particularly flat there. Is there a trick for being able to paint a perfect straight line up the middle? Yes, there is. So let's take a look at the guy with the sword. Okay. Here is the trick for getting a perfect straight line up the middle. Stop using paint. Go back and watch my How to Paint Sharp Thin Lines video. You need white ink, and you need to, and you'll edge it with the side of your brush, even though, I said it's very flat. Okay, let's assume it's 100% flat, and there's nothing to side brush it. Then you do your best to draw a straight line down here, and you will screw it up, and that's okay. Because then what you're going to do is, just as I just said, you're going to come back in with these colors, and you're going to erase the side of the line by taking this dark color, putting your brush down right here, and pushing in, and pushing in, and pushing in. And you're going to take this other color over here and push in, and push in, and push in, until you get this razor thin line. So a mixture of having something that can draw sharper, thinner lines like white ink, along with a combination of refinement by, again, erasing. The key to most of these things is erasing. People that often think in terms of like, I'm only drawing the thing. Why can't I draw the thing right? Don't try to perfect the thing. Fix it with what's around it, right? That's the insight that I really want to impart on people, that I think people often miss. Is you don't have to just draw the line. You have everything else beside the line, and you can just push in until all that's left is this itty bitty razor thin line. So that's my advice. But overall, these guys look really cool. I mean, you did a great job. This one looks especially good. I like this axe a lot. So you've clearly got the talent. I like the colors you're running through here. I would focus on the faces a little more. I know you didn't ask, but just a quick aside, like their faces need a little more detail. Do something like add some more color in there. Faces are the most important area on the miniature. And make sure you paint the eyes and stuff like that. All right, Kim. All right, hey, what's up, buddy? All right, so this is Northern Alliance, Kings of War, Vanguard, Mantic Games. So let's see, green stuffing capes on Dwarf and one of the Ice Fork girls, making battle axe. Let's see. Okay. All right. All right. Asking about the snow. Okay. All right. All right. So, yeah, as far as the snow goes, I mean, so the key here is, we'll talk about the snow effect mainly. There's a lot of things here, so I'm not, the main thing with the snow is, I would go back and watch my, I think it's 92, where it's in the 90s somewhere, the realistic snow. Because I talk about all the different ways that you have to use it. It has to be powdery. And even in like areas of thick snow, it's often not going to be pure snow. So you need things poking out of the snow. Like even look at a snowy mountaintop. It's not all snow, right? There's rocks that, because there's surfaces that are different angles, and so they don't all capture snow. There's plants that stick up through, just, stuff like that, right? By breaking that up and then having bits of the snow dry brushed on there, by having a bit of color underneath, which I think works. I think you've got a little bit of blue there. It might just be a reflection, but yeah, having a little blue poke out or something like that, I think is a good way to go. Yeah, that's probably my best advice. But spreading that out, making it more powdery. Like as far as the mixture goes, I that video contains my exact mixture of what I use, but I still use like baking soda or whichever one it is. I don't know. And powder, soda. I'm gonna say soda. And then white glue and water, and I use actually a little bit of realistic snow from Woodland Scenics. You can use a little crushed glass from Secret Weapon. All that stuff makes it look good because that little bit of reflection. I actually mix in glitter paint in that video, which is another good one to use because a little bit of glitter will give you that same effect. Or you can go to Secret Weapon and get the like crushed glass stuff. Do be careful with that. It's dangerous. It is literally crushed glass. But it's powdered glass, and it's too small to cut you, but it's still quite toxic if you like breathe that stuff in. So you don't want to breathe in powdered glass. But that kind of stuff is really good for snow. It gives you that reflective effect. Between that and a little bit of dry brushing on and having parts stick out that aren't covered in snow, that are more vertical or perpendicular to the ground, you'll see a lot better effect. So I hope that helps, buddy. All right, Bryan Latour with Boudica. Oh, I know this one quite well. So he says he kind of he liked the box art and wanted to do it. So, red hair, green cloak. Any general suggestions? Face, hair, texture. Okay. So let's go for the more, yeah, here we go. There we go. All right. Yeah, I mean, my answer on the face is it needs more definition. Like, she has a really expressive face, and it's go. There you go. Boom. You hit the Facebook thing. It knows it's a face, so that right there is successful. I like the roughness of the war paint. I think that actually works really well. It looks like paint. The cut is nice. I think this hair down here shouldn't be quite that dark. It should be more brownish, but I don't know that red hair ever gets that black. So I would be careful on that shading. Like, I would still bring these tones up just a little bit, especially if there would be just random follicles down here catching more light. But overall, I really like your execution on the hair. I think it's strong. Other than your deepest shadow, I think your hair looks really good. You've got lots of nice light catches there. I think that's solid. I think that the face is your main chance for to continue to build it out. And that's just a matter of like more color into the cheeks, into the side of the head. If you go watch when Ben Kometz tackled this, well, I guess he didn't do this one. He did something very much like this one. He did the Viking girl. That's what he did. Sorry, different. I think same line, but different. Or different line. Sorry, whatever. It's a very similar sculpt. Anywho, the one with the shield behind her head, the shield maiden. If you go look at that, you'll see how he's adding the different zones into the face. Honestly, another great thing to do if you're still not sure what I mean. Okay, here's my best advice. Go watch a bunch of makeup contouring videos. That sounds so silly, but I really mean it. If you want to paint great bust faces, go watch makeup contouring videos on YouTube. Like, the people who do makeup reviews and do show you how to contour your face and how to add color. Like, they are absolute masters of the subtlety of placing color and stuff on a female face. And they are able to magically reshape their whole face using largely nothing but pigment and the same tools we have. So go watch that stuff, and it will make you a better. It'll show you how to add in that extra tones in there. I think part of this might also be just the shot is kind of overexposed, I think. But the war paint looks good. I think the face and the skin is your main chance for uptick. As far as the sort of tartan pattern goes, you could build that up a little more. I like it. I like the roughness of it. I like the pattern. I think you did a really good job keeping it straight. Maybe some extra thread lines in there of extra colors could really add some visual interest. Like, the key with bust is always just more. When you think you're done, you do twice as much. Okay? Busts are so zoomed in, it's just more. The answer is always more. What more can you do? And if you look at it and go, that could have more texture, that could have more detail, then keep going. So that's my best advice. But she looks good. I think the hair is an absolute success. I think your war paint looks really, really good. So yeah, you're really nailing that stuff. Alrighty. Next up, we've got Scott, who says he wasn't satisfied with the current War Boss models. So he always wanted to create a Mechano Beast. So he kit bashed a fellow he's calling Goffslappa Grot Scraga. Sounds good. So he's looking at weathering and damage. Somewhat gritty orc. Okay. Ambot's always a great build for orc bosses. Yeah, I mean, my answer... So first of all, photos. Number one thing. We got to get better photos, Scott. Rules. Rules of photo taking. No direct light. No overexposure. Things in focus. Like, this is way too dark. This is way too light. You see how different this looks here compared to this? Like, it makes it very, 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 very difficult to evaluate. Okay. Like this, get him in frame and get a solid static background, and just like open a book is usually the best bet. Nice, even diffuse lighting. There's a good tutorial on the Warhammer community page about this. The conversion is good. Now, as far as battle damage goes, it's hard for me to really tell, but I'll kind of go here. Again, I would direct you toward my realistic battle damage video. So go take a look at that. It's in the Hobby Cheating playlist. My biggest advice is things like this white in the center don't make much sense to me. And a lot of the things I said earlier are still true. Like, don't do the silver thing here, I think is what you're doing. Either way, either it's white and it's too big, or it's silver, but I can't tell either way. Like the cut should be larger than this. You don't want to scratch away and reveal silver. The metal that's underneath enameled armor isn't highly polished silver, right? The metal that's underneath there is industrial something that just was, and unpolished metal is rather non-reflective, especially industrial metal, right? So if you're going to scratch it away and you want to show that, use either a very, very, very dark steel, or you just use gray, or don't use metal or anything like that at all. Just have it be rusted out completely, because it would rust pretty fast. So watch that video, and I think that'll really help you in the right direction as far as getting some more chips and stuff on there. Overall, the conversion's awesome. Like, you did a great job of bringing all this stuff together. I think he looks really cool. I just think we want to have that mix of, like, battle damage should be organic. It should have a story. I should be able to tell what's happened based on it and stuff like that. And I think you want to work on sort of the colors you're using. So that video will send you in the right direction. Oh boy, he's a big boy. Cerastus Knight Acheron for House Virani. Yeah, sure. Okay. He'd love some feedbacks on the weathering in particular, but any comments are welcome. Boy, this is really a weathering month, isn't it? All right, well, let's see. He doesn't look very weathered from here, which is probably good. You got a nice minimal touch. Do I have any zoomed in? Oh, neat. He's got a video. Okay. So this is, people watching are going to see me like lean way in. I mean, I would say it's probably fine. It looks like I can kind of see in the white. I guess you got some streaks running down here, which is nice. Your weathering touch is super minimal. Looks like maybe some scratches and stuff up here. So you definitely didn't overdo it. So I think it's fine. Maybe the shoulder. Yeah, like you've got like a hole here with like a streak coming out and this kind of stuff. On the pattern, it looks really good. I can see like the scratches and dots and stuff you took out of there. So overall, I mean, I think it's fine. The legs down here look good. The dusting and stuff of the feet of him walking through rubble looks good. So the scratching, the most obvious place is sort of the scratching on these patterns here, which I think that's where you're very successful. You made this look very integrated, so you covered this really well. It's hard for me to tell on the green. The photos just don't really allow it very much. So I would say you're probably okay. A few more stronger streaks coming out of rivets might be something you want to explore, especially on places where it would naturally fall a lot. So maybe on the legs, inside, or one coming down on the chest or something. Just a few things like that might be something you want to look at. But overall, I mean, I think this is a really great looking knight. I mean, these things are huge. Like, this guy is beyond big, and I think you did a great job with him. So yeah, cool stuff. All right. Greg Young, speed paint done about 3 hours. Okay. Looking for general feedback. Well, It's always tough. I mean, speed paint's a speed paint. But here's my best advice right off the rip. Matte varnish this stuff. Leather is not shiny like this. Like, leather can sometimes have a shine to it, but not this. This is a glossy shine, where, like, washes or whatever this is got into the recess. Also be careful when you're putting snow on models. It doesn't hang like that. It will hang on the edge. Like, this is too far up and too in the cracks. It should be mostly gathered around the edge and be very thin, much thinner than this, much smaller than this up here. And you want to use, like, my best trick is you also use some white pigment, and then you place that above the snow to replicate just, like, very little flakes that are there but are just kind of hanging on, because you've got a scale challenge here. Yeah, I mean, for a speed paint, it's fine. What you could do is work on stuff like, you know, separating your elements more in the individual things, like making sure the cross, for example, is nice and black lined and separated from the robe. You could take your highlights up a little more, that kind of thing. But, I mean, I think for a speed paint, it's successful. Like, the biggest thing you could do is probably just matte varnish him, and that'll get rid of a lot of that sort of shine that shouldn't be there and make him look a lot better. So that's my thought. All right, Robert says, first time painting knights. Don't think I'd say they're done yet, but he's quite proud. Okay, good. So these are our armigers. All right, so first time. Yeah, I mean, my basic advice is we got to do more to mix them up. Like, you've got a nice color down. Now we need tonal variation. So go back and watch the referenced video on tonal variation. I'll assume the bases aren't done yet. That's probably the part you're still haven't done. So that's cool. Just make sure you do something with the bases, obviously. I think your colors are well applied, but go watch, like, my video on contrast, and that'll help. But, like, everything here needs tonal variation. The red is too flat. The steel is too flat. The gold is too flat. Like, everything's flat, flat, flat. You did a great job picking everything out. Now you need to take it to the next level. I have a video on panel modulation. You may want to check that out. But one of the most important things you can do to really pop these up with the least amount of effort is just pin washing panel lines. So this is an old trick from scale modeling, but all these little rivets and all these little panels, they need to be dark lined. Everything needs to be nice and separated. And so that's like step one, what I would definitely tell you to do. Step two is on the metals. You know, I don't know if you have an airbrush or not. Maybe. Kind of looks like there's some stuff back here, but if you do, you know, give me some different colors and variation on the metals, to make sure that they're not just kind of this flat steel. Like, give me some more interesting tones and stuff going on in there. So I have a video about, you know, sort of, you could do an oil wash over them. You could use your airbrush and bring some darker tones from below, work some browns in there and stuff like that. I've got a couple different videos on that, that you could go check out, and that would definitely help. But I think you've got a great base here. Everything looks really clean. You really, really well applied this stuff. They're nice bases. Now you just got to figure out where you want to go to take them to the next level. Okay, Marco. First time water effect base. More difficult than expected. So trying to get smoother transitions on the skin. Okay. So let's talk about water effects. Well, first off, black edge the rim of the base. Number one. Always, always, always. If the edge of the base can be any color you want as long as it's black. So that's number one, because that will help sell the rest of this effect when there's an edge to the universe. When it's all like hanging over the edge and messy like this, it immediately doesn't look as much. I think the stones look fine, but if you want to make them look more stony, you need to stipple them. Like, rocks have a lot of natural texture to them, so just start stippling in there. Now, as far as the skin, I don't think your actual 4 to 5 transition's your problem. I think you just need more highlights. We need to pop it up a little bit, and you do want to cut out some of this satin sheen. He's still a little too shiny, so I think you want to kind of watch that sort of thing. And I think that's probably your best steps. But yeah, a little more, bring my one up, you know, a little more highlights, especially on the tops of these muscles, things like that. But you've got some great color tonal variation in the skin. You're definitely going the right direction. It's not your low tones the problem. I think it's actually just your high tones. As far as the realistic water goes, I think it, you know, kind of looks fine. Again, just black edge the base, and I bet you see a big difference there in the look of that effect. All right, Mickey. Oh boy, this is a big one. Okay. I've done everything I can on this and think it's the best you've done. Lots or thought on creating color triangles against color diagonals. Okay. All right. So obviously she resculpted some of this, and, you know, we can go back here. Let's just, you know, we've got the whole base, which we had looked at several months back. There we go. That's the shot I was going for. Yeah, I mean, Mickey, I think this is really good. There's a lot of texture to it. I mean, it's obviously an amazing piece. Overall, I mean, I think all your colors here are so desaturated, other than the tip of her weapon. I'm not sure you've actually got any challenges with composition, to be fair. I think you're fine on that regard. Getting a shot of the weapon here. There we go. That's the one. I think I'm not sure I'm in love with these white lines for the reasons I mentioned earlier. I think just a nice solid edge line would do you a lot better. I think the colors you use here are really good. And I like that they're reflected in like the snake mouths and stuff like that. I just think that these white lines kind of disrupt it in a way. The patterning on her dress looks really good. Let's see if we can get a good shot of that. There we go. Patterning on the dress looks really good. I like the added texture. The only thing I'm not sure about texture-wise is, and let me see if I can get a nice zoom-in shot here. Here on the skin, some of the edge of the skin still looks kind of rough. You may think about a glaze or two here on these transitions. Like, I'm not sure if you... It looks almost like liver-spotted skin, and I'm not sure that's really the effect you were going for. Maybe it was. I don't know. That's really the only thing I caught on this that sort of hit me. Was it feels like this transition here is kind of rough. Between like 5 to 3, it feels a little rough. And I feel like just some glaze of like a 4 would really level all this out and really enrich in that overall tone. So that's just a thought for whatever it's worth. But I mean, obviously this is just an absolutely stunning piece. You know, it's this huge diorama she built with everything, with all the stone elves and everything. So very naturalistic, Morathi. That is to say, like the snake patterning, which looks great, by the way, all being in very realistic snake colors, I think looks great. So, I mean, all in all, I think this is a absolute, masterpiece. So I think that's the what I mentioned about the shading and adding a little more 4 into all your skin. You're kind of the step between mid and low. I think that's the only thing that's missing in the skin tone. So maybe some thin glazes of that. But all in all, this is just wonderful work, Mickey. I mean, absolutely fantastic. All right. So let's keep going. So next up, I'm going to say Kale, but I'm probably wrong. It says he moved on from Titans and finished up his Obsidious Malix from Blackstone Fortress. Wanted to practice his blends and to make the metalwork more interesting by implementing some NMM style techniques with shading and inks, which is great. That's wonderful. That's exactly what I like to see. So basically looking for practice on that. The glow effect on the hammer and the gun was also something he hadn't had a chance to practice much. Okay, so let's take a look. So your blends are looking good, nice and smooth. I think the glow effects look nice. You definitely, so I have a video on painting like glowing runes. I think you executed that sort of style very well here. I like the subtle fade into the blue-gray. I think that looks really nice up here, this areas. Those are good. Your edges are nice. I did not realize this guy had so many tentacles. This guy's Tentacle City over here. I hadn't actually looked at this fig up close since I didn't buy this box set. So yeah, and as far as the shading goes, so let's see if we can get to one where, yeah, here we go. Okay, so I think I would question what metals you're using because it looks like there's still, like metals that have large flakes are going to be rougher to use with this technique. It looks like some of these, I can still see like the flaky texture of the metal here where I can see the pigment. So you want something really thin. If you can't get, like Vallejo metal color is your gold standard, as I've said. If you can't get a hold of that, then, go for something in like the Vallejo Air range, which is commonly available everywhere. But at any rate, I think you're on the right track here. You've definitely got some good mixtures. One of the keys with it is always keep a little bit of the gold paint in with your ink. It will just make your ink apply a lot smoother. So when you're doing like your 5, your deepest shadow, you still want a little bit of that gold in there, just enough to make it adhere and even out. The sort of paint medium is a little different than ink medium, and it'll just allow it to be a little smoother. But other than that, I mean, you've definitely got the right idea going. Here, we'll watch the video together real quick. Ooh, fun stuff. So yeah, I think it looks good. You're placing nice highlights. You could go up to maybe a little silver on a few of those points. I can't tell if they really are or not, but it's very reflective, so that's good. A few points popped up to a really bright one, I think would help. But overall, yeah, I think you're pretty successful. Your blends are good. You may want to continue working it because you want to get a little higher contrast, so I'll stop right here. These areas here could have a little bit higher highlight on them. His face especially is what needs some higher highlights. So we need to bring our 1 up some to really make this the center point, just because you have a lot of bright colors going on, these glowy runes sort of, draw attention down here, the glowy rune and the plasma weapon. So you want to make sure this is nice and bright to draw attention back up. So a good like ice yellow is a good color to mix in as a highlight on skin. Makes it look real like it's warm. So you may want to look at something like that. But overall, it's a great piece. Good stuff. All right. Daniel, 2 things he needs suggestions for. The skin, it looks kind of boring. A little more tonal variation. Okay. Yeah. Well, if you think it, it's probably right. And the wings, no idea how to start, what I want them to look like. I always struggle with those. Okay. So let's just zoom in here on this guy and we'll take a look here. Yeah, with the wings, so actually let's start with the skin. Yes, you're correct. You do need some more tonal variation, and the answer is exactly as you said. It was some glazes, purple or red. You're dead on. Like, you already knew the answer to this before you came to me, so I'm so glad to hear that. Like, yes, you're correct. Just do that thing. And where you want to pull the glazes to is, basically toward the lower part of the muscles, toward the shadows. So, for example, let's just it's not always, I guess, the lower part, but it's there's sort of an art to it, I suppose. It's often shadows. So, like, let's just break this down real quick. Legs, I would pull it down to here. This should be more red-purple. His shoulder muscle here. So we go down in this area. So it's kind of like a little J-hook around here. Bicep, J-hook here. That kind of thing. On his chest, it would be up in this area here, where the bottom of the pectoral would be the most lit. And so on and so forth. Now, as for the wings, it looks like he did some scratches across there, but the paint was very light. You want to make sure if you're going to do these kinds of things, you got a nice, strong, solid application of paint. You don't want anything that's going to go on thin like this. You want the lines to be really razor thin. That usually means inks. Inks are high pigment. They'll go on stronger. They'll paint sharp, thin lines. And then my recommendation is glazes over the top. So just glaze that red back in, and then use some deep purples, purple blacks, something like that, and pull towards the shadows. So the nature of like leather wings is where they stretch. If this is the bones, where they're stretched apart, this part in the middle is going to allow the most light through, so will be the lightest color. Whereas this near the bones, the supporting structure, will be the darkest because the skin is still gathered up. So just more shadow down in this area and more light up here. You can run a red glaze over it all and then just start pulling colors down, and you're going to be in a good place. But overall, cool scheme. I dig it. He's coming along real nice. All right, Joseph brings us a big old dreadnought. Says his goal was to focus on contrast and to make the model feels like it belongs more in a battlefield setting. Okay. Depth to the armor, wear spot, highlights, and feeling has been used. Okay, cool. And also the first time he's used the overheated metal effect. Well, a chain gun is a great use for that. So let's take a look here. Okay, so good. I can see some definite contrast. My real honest answer is we can go farther. These big flat planes like this, it's tough. Your airbrush is your friend, but you want to make sure you focus in, bring some like high highlights down here, and then you back them into the darkest darks, right? So this edge here would be in the most shadow, and this bottom of this plate here would be in the highest highlight, and so on and so forth, right? Same here and here and here and here and so on. And the other thing you may want to look at is maybe a little stronger edging, especially just on the top sides, not all over the place. I don't need you to 3D the whole thing. But like, especially up here on like these edges where it's directly facing the light, this kind of a top edge here in this panel, that would be a good place to really focus in. As far as battle damage goes, it's pretty minimal. You could certainly go farther if you want him to look old and weathered and worn. Again, I would direct you back to the battle damage video. This is just a weathering and battle damage month. That's cool. I like it when the theme emerges. And you want to also make sure your rivets are nice and dark around all of them. Some of them, it looks like you got a little bit there. Kind of hard to tell. It might just be the picture. So if you already did that, that's cool. But especially watch out for stuff like this that's hidden under his arm. He's still holding it up, so there should be some light down in here, okay? But overall, it's good. I think you got a good contrast. This guy's a lot more contrasting than a lot of the dreadnoughts I see, so you're in a good place. One thing you do want to watch out for is when you use these decals like this, do make sure you scratch these up a little, put something over them. You don't want them to look so absolutely fresh and clean. If you have scrapes and stuff elsewhere on the model, these would be the absolute last thing applied and the thinnest type of paint, because these would have just literally been like, sprayed on with probably in the factory with a can of spray paint with a template laid down on it, right? Or a power sprayer kind of airbrush thing. But it'll be a thin layer of paint, as opposed to this, which is probably like some thick enamel that's been laid on over the armor and is adhered in a much different way. So this is going to scratch really easy, right? So just watch out for stuff like that. Little scratches through here can make a big difference just to weather these out. A streak going over the top or something, like a little rust streak. And that's another thing I'd look into. In my video, I walk you through some different streaks. There's all sorts of different streaking products out there. Look into those. Those can make a huge difference on making something look just a little bit weathered. You don't need to go crazy. Just some light streaking on a vehicle really makes it look like it's been out in the weather. But overall, this is a good piece. To turn to your effect here on the barrel. I mean, it looks a little too dark. You may want to, I have a heated weapon tutorial. Looks like we've got a little too much black and brown and not enough of the other colors. Like we went just a little too heavy there. So you may want to go back to that tutorial and just kind of take a look and really focus up on getting those blends in there. It looks worn, it looks older, but like one of the problems is your brown stops here and then it gets silver on the other side. When it happens under a thing like this, it looks strange, like it jars the eye. You would want the brown to stop like here and start getting into silver to here or steel to here, right? That way you don't have this effect happening. All right, next up, Chris Lang. Finished his first diorama. Overall composition, non-metallic and weathering in general, of course. Painted the plinth already black. All right. Oh, boy. Dioramas are a big one. Okay, so let's see if I can get a whole shot here, because if we're going to do a whole piece, we need to take it all in. Okay. There we go. Okay. So, do I have one with good even lighting of the whole thing? I like all the zoom ins, but, you know. All right, nope, that's the best one I got. Okay, that's fine. I mean, my answer is it's very, very busy. Like, there is a lot going on here. And that's what's going to be your main challenge. You're using a lot of colors all over the place. Like, it's riotous. And one of the challenges with a thing of this size is you haven't really given me a place where my eyes can go rest and directed my attention to the areas where I should be looking. So when you do a diorama, you want areas of more visual information and less visual information. You don't want anything to be blank and just sort of neutral, but stuff should be leading your eye around, right? It's certainly a very cool diorama, and you've got a lot going on. Like, it's a very cool take on Nurgle. Like, everything has heaps and heaps of detail on it. So as far as there's always something to discover, you definitely succeeded on that regard. I think one of the challenges you've got is, like, again, when I look at the piece out in any particular area, it's tough to tell exactly where I'm supposed to be looking, what exactly I'm supposed to be focusing in on. And the pieces are all very riotous. Now, that's just a kind of challenge with this sort of thing, especially when you want to do this sort of Nurgle party. I mean, every piece individually looks wonderfully gross, heavily rusted, just an absolute macabre nightmare, which is exactly what you want. Like, that's great. Like, that's an absolute triumph. And I just love the way you kit bashed everything together. Like, it's amazing. This is an absolute, like, it's stunning to look at how many different things you used to create this. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Like, this is just, every time I look, there's more to discover. So that's great. I have a feeling this is one of those things that probably reads much better in person. It's really tough through the photos, to be honest. Just because I bet if I was looking at it in front of it, I would find it easier to pick out the individual details. You know, here we're playing with challenges of depth of focus, right? Like, this whole part of the picture's out of focus and this isn't, and, you know. So it just makes it a little trickier. Now, as far as, like, the rust effects and the metal, yeah, I mean, I think they look fine. They're kind of lost amongst the haze. So on a piece like this, I'm not sure that it's super important to have it be exactly precise. You've certainly got a lot going on. I think compositionally, maybe your biggest challenge is that it's very weighted to one side. So you have this, like, very left angle composition, which is generally which you can do, but you need something to counterbalance it. So, like, this big guy over on the left, Mr. Flying Bloat Gross guy here, would be a lot better if he was here and this guy was here, so that we had a straight line going down that was like, and this guy's shorter, but that's okay. We had a weighted piece here and then a light center and then him. It would still keep my eye moving. As it is, all of your action is literally on the left side of the line. Like if I draw an imaginary line here, everything's happening over here for the most part. I mean, 90% of your actions over here. We've got like this guy, a toad, you know, I mean, this is where the life is, right? And so that's kind of a challenge. But I doubt this is the kind of thing you can probably pull apart and change at this point. But when you're thinking about composition, Chris Shearer wrote a great piece in the Illustrated Fantasy Artist all about composition. It's worth picking up. I think it was in issue 1. It's an absolute, complete, wonderful breakdown of sort of composition, and especially in pieces this large. And Chris is an absolute master of doing these sort of off-balance compositions. But the key is just you want to always be thinking about like where your line's moving people. And right now your line is moving me like this and telling me ignore this half of the piece, right? So that's the challenge. But overall, wow, I mean, what a nightmare you've made in all the best ways. Like this is just a crazy amount of detail, man. This is something you should be very, very proud of. Like you did an absolute killer job here. A quick note on rusting with non-metallic metal. I see people do this a lot. Let me see if I saw it in a couple places in here. I'll just zoom through until I can see one. Yeah. When you mix rust with non-metallic, you should not jump straight to bright white gray steel from the rust. That's not how rust works. So like if a piece is rusted, like this looks, the claws look okay. There was just a couple places where I saw you do it when I was flipping through idly. Here you go. This is the example I was looking for. Okay, the top of this gear, you have like these light reflection lines and stuff like that. The side of the gear is rusted and weathered. That wouldn't happen, right? Like if this has gotten to this point, like this is orange rust. This is significant weathering, right? Like this is oxidation at a high level. If this is happening, this long ago got tarnished, right? And so you just want to avoid, when you're mixing non-metallic in your rust effects, it needs to be basically like a dull gray. The reflection is gone. There is no more polished reflective metal left. It's all black and brown at this point, if we're going to this level. So like, I mean, and if you just Google rusted metal, you'll see hundreds of images, and what you won't see is a super bright, shiny piece of metal that is one singular piece where the other half is orange rust. It's just not going to happen, right? So that's just a quick thing I caught as I was flipping through. But overall, I mean, Cheezel Pete's, man. Breathtaking piece. All right. Tim Heinzman with his Lady of Depravity. Feedback for the skin if you think that the colors work well together. Okay. So first things first that caught my eye immediately is make sure you fill your gaps. That's number one. You got some gaps there still. As to the skin, I think it needs more variation, especially in the highlights. Like this model does come with 72 nipples or something. So, you know, make sure those actually get picked out in some way. But more variation through there, especially into the highlights. What I'm missing here is my 1s and 2s. We start with like the mid-tone and go down, and that's kind of all we have. So I think you need more highlights in the skin to make it more interesting. Now, as to the colors, no. They don't really work. Like, I don't want to be super harsh, but this sort of Toucan Sam rainbow thing here, no. It's too much. Like, it's just too much color that doesn't need to be there. There are ways to execute sort of rainbow stuff in miniatures. It's tricky. But in general, I think you want to kind of avoid that level of garishness. And here's the problem. Let your eyes go slack. What's the area of most visual interest on this thing? What do your eyes rest on? Like if you just stare at nothing, where do your eyes fall? It falls to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yellow points. Because yellow has this ultra high lumosity that just draws your eye in. And so what you've created is this incredible circle of don't look at the center of the miniature, especially because of the weaker highlights here. Okay? If these just faded like purple to red and then purple to red or something like that, or red to blue or whatever, you know, like if you had a nice 2-color blend there, if we got rid of the yellow, got rid of the green, it's another color that doesn't need to be there, this would be a much stronger piece. You nailed it down here on the scales. This is correct. This is great. These very stark, you know, it's not that blue and red are necessarily complementary colors, but they do contrast quite well. So like this type of execution, that's what we needed out here. Okay. So my advice would be, yeah, definitely kill that yellow and that green and just mimic what you did here. You nailed it here. Just do that up here, and you have a much stronger piece. But overall, very cool. Hope to. I like your eyes. I think those are picked out real nice. And I like the scales. Love them. So can't wait to see what you do with it from here. All right, Tobias. So he had submitted a speed painted ghost. This came out of a 5-hour challenge. Okay, so he had to build and paint everything in 5 hours. Okay. Yeah, I probably can't find your building mistakes because, who knows? I don't know what the actual kit is for the Craven King. I've never assembled it. To me, it looks all fine. Yeah, this is a great, like, again, you nailed it with the ghost last time. So if you go back and watch last month's review, he did a great job with a very fast painted ghost. And I think you executed on this really well again here. This is really nice. Good transitions, strong color, simple palette. Like, and I don't mean that in any negative way. I mean that in all the strongest way. Working in a simple palette is something I love to do, and it's something that can often make your piece so much stronger. When you're speed painting, it's an absolute lifesaver. Like changing paints and working new highlights and doing all this stuff, it's a killer, right? You want to get your palette down as small as you can, and as contrasting as you can, and you did that here. I love the light on the green. I think the tops, their heads, and his shoulders work really well. I think the transition into the purple is smooth. I love a good purple and green. I think these are, classic villain colors. Yeah, man. I mean, I don't know what I'd tell you for 5 hours. For a piece of this size to, like, build prime paint, A+. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's stuff you could do. Like, I could give you feedback for where you'd go beyond here, but I don't think that's really what you're looking for. Like, because in this amount of time, it's an absolute wonderful piece of work. Again, you're gonna have just a speed painted Nighthawk army together here that looks stunning on the table. So, well done. All right, next up, Tebow, bringing us a big old dreadnought. Oh, this is interesting. All right, so he'd like to enter it in an upcoming competition. So he's looking for competition feedback. All right, so we're gonna do that, Tebow. I'm gonna give you feedback like a judge at a competition. Okay. So this will be, we're going to go in on you here. Fortunately, I don't think you have a huge amount of problems. Like, this looks really nice. Your freehand looks good. The damage on the edges looks good. Streaking looks good. This needs some more, the 14, like I get that, the 14th Legion. It needs more solid parts to it. Like, it's this very faded gray. I like the chips, but the chips are too regular. You have, like, all these dots out of it are exactly the same size. So that's just that's the tip of your paintbrush digging into it. I need a few darker parts. I need a few longer scratches, stuff like that. The actual scratches across the thing are good. I'd like to see a little more dirt color down here at the bottom of the feet, like in a more brown color a little bit, where kind of some wear has come up. That'll, if you get me a little green brown down here on the bottom, it will help balance out the green up here at the top. Good shading color, good damage all over. I like all of that. Let's see, what else do we have? The rust implementation on the metal is nice and strong. You could break up some of this metal back here a little bit. Give me a couple interesting orange rust spots, something rusted out completely. Hit a few things with copper and then oxidize them. That would be a great way to go. It would also let you hide some interesting greens here on the back. So I think that could be really fun. The burn on the barrels looks good. You could soften that transition a little bit. It's a little harsh right there. Could soften that out a little. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think other than that, you're in a good place. This is a strong piece. More with the rocks. The rocks are flat still. They're still very, very gray. These are gray rocks sitting in, you've drawn green sludge here. The chances of these rocks being this gray are very slim. Give me a lot more color in these rocks. Gross moss, slime, stickiness, something. Like, kick these up a notch. This is the part that's letting you down. Okay? But overall, I think it's a freaking great piece. And I love the freehand on the top. I think that came out really wonderful. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody do a split freehand across the top of a Leviathan or whatever the model pattern of this one is. I think it's Leviathan. But Yeah, that's really good. That's a really clever effect. I actually quite like that. It's almost disturbing in how it sort of breaks up the image, but it also does create a nice three faces kind of thing, which is the three circles, Nurgle. So kind of a cool little, kind of a cool little theme, a mental hit there. I don't know if you intended it, but it works well. So yeah, dig it, man. Good stuff. Didn't have to go on any of that hard. It's a great piece, Tebow. You did wonderful, as as many of your pieces have been. It's just really great work. All right, Chris says he's quite new to painting, so he doesn't have anything specific. Okay, if you would leave feedback with one thing you did well and one thing you think you could work on. Hey, absolutely, Chris. That sounds fantastic. Let's do exactly that. All right, so let's see here. Quite new with painting. Just going to get a good look at the guy. All right. Okay. So one thing we did well here is we made nice color choices throughout. Everything feels very, aproposly colored. One note: if you're doing blue jeans, you want to bring that down a little bit. It shouldn't be that blue. Blue jeans aren't actually that saturated, so like you want to take it down into more of a gray blue. That's a quick note there. But all your colors look good. I think honestly, what I would have you focus on is your biggest challenge is just getting your paint and cleanly applied, and bringing up your smoothness with it. What I mean by that is you want to make sure your paint's going on in a controlled fashion. It looks like you're pretty clean overall, but you want to make sure you have you want darkness separating these things. You can see where a little yellow got down here, red. Like work on really separating your pieces, and you can see the red splotch here, and painting clean. That kind of brush control is probably your thing. Secondarily with that is then just working in those blends and those highlights, pushing that contrast a little more in the skin, more on the black, just all that kind of stuff comes with time. But overall, you've got a good eye for hitting, getting all your color in there. And so I think just working up your tonal variation and your brush control, and you'll be coming along greatly. I'm glad you're along for the ride, man. I hope to see some more pieces from you as you continue to go along your hobby journey. Very cool fig. I have no idea what this is from. It's a neat fig, a weird demon dude with a machine gun. It's awesome. I've never seen this before. All right, Daniel, Orc Brute for Warcry, going for a Shyish feel. Okay, let's see. So he's very desaturated, which I assume is what you want, that sort of realm of death thing. Yeah, I mean, I would say probably your checkerboard. If you're going to do the checkerboard, the one thing that jumps out at me is the checkerboard pattern isn't clean. And if you're going to do a check pattern, if you're going to do your checks and dags, they've got to be sharp. Like orcs keep some tight checks and dags. They don't mess around, right? So you just want to make sure that looks really nice. Okay. So my best advice is you want to make sure those are nice and sharp. And then I would think about if there's some kind of color you want to work in here. I like the gray armor, but something, maybe a purple, even if it's desaturated, some kind of color in there is really going to help overall. Okay? But very cool base. I mean, he's a good looking brute. I think he looks nice. All right. So let's keep moving. All right. Cole, first time getting feedback. Been painting for a year and a half. Doesn't really have the patience or the skills for display quality, but these show off the pretty good tabletop quality you can reach. Okay. Not really sure what to ask about. Just interested in hearing general feedback or tips if there are easy ways to improve something. All right. That's fine. Well, you gave me a lot of photos. I don't know I need this many, but that's cool. I'm all right with it. More is, and you did this whole nice spread thing. This is great. This is a good one. We'll go from here. So one thing I noticed is that your yellow is looking a little shiny. You may want to matte that out. Especially, that's an easy thing to improve. So a little matte varnish before you do your metals. That can be a good way to go. Mixing up some of the details on the brutes. So I'll show you what I mean here. When we look at these guys, they have like some just general, these rivets and stuff like that. You want to make sure those get nice and picked out. Just little things like that. You want to make sure those don't go, those don't go unpainted. Like stuff like that tends to stand out, right? So, same thing here, these kinds of rivets. Just make sure you're getting detail and all that stuff. As far as rust and weathering goes, like I would avoid kind of this general splashing of effect. Make it more focused, more of a stippling effect. That's an easy, fun thing to do. I have a video on doing Iron Jaws weapons. Give that a watch. It's a fast, easy technique that can produce some really, really cool standout weapons. So that could be a place for you to look at. I've painted a lot of iron jaws in my day, and I like them. So that could be a fun thing for you to explore. Skin tone looks good. I like the color choice. I think the yellow and the turquoise is pretty cool. The biggest thing that stands out to me is with your edge highlighting. That's probably, if I was going to tell you one thing to work on, your edge highlighting is too chunky. So I'd look into like maybe some flow improver or something like that. You really got to work on getting the side of the brush going, get a nice thin line. That's probably, you can also mix in inks to make things easier. So look up, go find yourself some flow improver at your local art store. You can buy a giant bottle of it for like $10 or $15 that'll last you for basically the rest of your hobby lifetime. And that'll really help you out. That a little bit of that mixed into your paint, and you'll find drawing those kind of sharp lines becomes much easier. But overall, these are cool dudes. I mean, for a year and a half, you're progressing really well. You've got some really nice work. You've got a good eye for it. So I'd say, like, go check out the weapon video, see if that sparks some interest and shows you how to focus up your rust and weathering a little more. Matte out the yellow armor. You don't want it to be that shiny. It shouldn't. It feels wet in a weird way. And then sharpen. Work on your edge highlighting. I think that's where you want to be. But glad you're along, Cole. Hope to see more stuff. More of Du Bois. All right, Damien. These last couple, I think, are technically past the end of the month, but we'll give you a pass. I won't make you repost. All right, Damien. First time here. Pretty much a beginner, so he thought he'd post his Korgorath. It's almost finished. Wants to know what can be improved, especially the Cornish symbol on the chest. Also, what do you think for the color scheme? Okay, sure. All right, so you're right about the picture quality, which makes it tough, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like the number one thing to me being able to give you feedback, I will say this every time. Don't apologize for the picture quality. Take different pictures. If you have a cell phone camera, if you have any cell phone, there are ways to take good pictures. So just, go watch the video and on like Warhammer Community and take them. All right. That will make my life and your life a lot better. And this comes from somebody who struggles and takes bad pictures. But, again, solid, stable background. Open up a book to the black and white page that's in the slipcover of most, Warhammer books. Set them on there. Diffuse lighting, no direct lighting. Stabilize your camera. Click a shot. So, at any rate. Okay, now, as to what's going on, it's a little fuzzy, so it's going to be hard for me to tell. But, I mean, the answer is more tonal variation. The bone is very flat. The red is very flat. The black is very flat. The gray is very flat, right? I mean, that's the answer. Also, I'm not sure what you're doing with the base. If this is meant to be a lava thing, don't paint it on like that. So, like, I have a couple different videos. If you watch the most recent one I did on doing lava bases, that can give you some good ideas. There are many ways to do lava bases that are very simple and fast. But, yeah, you want to avoid this kind of a thing. Like, it just reads as hollow. Also, the rim of the base should always be flat black. Don't carry your stuff over the edge. It seems counterintuitive, but this is the frame of the picture. This is not inside the picture. This is why we put frames around pictures, to separate them from the universe that they are in. Trust me, everything on your miniature will always look better if you black rim the base. I cannot stress that enough. So, that being said, I think what I would majorly challenge you to, Damien, is just some more tonal variation. So, like, I don't know that I would gold edge that scar on his chest. I don't know that there's a need for that. I mean, if you did it, that's fine. Then you just want to go back in with black and make sure it's a really thin line of gold all the way around it. So again, just as I talked about earlier in the review, it's not just about painting the line, you can push back in. Oh, by the way, for the previous person who was working on edge highlighting, that's another good trick. When you're doing those sharp edges, you can push up against them with a mid-tone color to then, if you just can't get the sharp thin line, draw a thick line and then use the color on the other side of the line and push the line back to being thin. But yeah, just kind of break it up a little more. Give me some brighter highlights, just more tonal variation. Again, check out the reference video and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay. But overall, it's cool. I like the black and red scheme. I think the gray for like those other bone pieces are a nice choice. It breaks it up from all the other bone stuff that you have in a more sort of traditional bone scheme. We just need to vary the color more. All right. All right. Hope to see more from you in the future, sir. All right. And then Reinhardt. Yes, you are too late, but that's okay. We'll still do it anyways. This is his Telemon Dreadnought. If you could so he wants to know if we see any improvement on his true metallic TMM shading and marble effect. Okay. I try to do the effect strictly with an airbrush because I like the finished look of it better. Okay, sure. Oh yeah, don't worry. Thank you. I appreciate the reference, but I very much remember your model. It was a cool model last month, man. All right, so let's take a look at the marble first. It is a little satiny, so watch out for that direct light when you take a picture. This is direct lighting that's hitting this. But I can look over here and I can say we are much improved. Oh, this got so much better, buddy. This got so much better. Wow. Wow. I mean, you blew me away from last month. Like, let's just go look at this, right? Like, you see how this is thicker, these kind of thicker white lines. It doesn't really read as well. And then we go look at this. Oh, this is great. This is great. I'm so excited, Reinhardt. You really did a great step up there. That's wonderful. Wonderful. As for the shading, yeah, it's good. It's better. I mean, I still think what we're lacking ultimately is, you know, each of these things should be picked out. So like on a guy like this, he's got this big eagle, right? So it's not just the shading, but it's the highlighting. Like, why is this part of his foot not dark? Why is the line under here and under here not dark? Why is this not as dark? You know what I'm saying? Like, all these little filigrees, these Telemon dreadnoughts are a real, you know, kind of detail nightmare for all the different things they have. So that would be my sort of, I think you've nailed the marble. You're there. Where you want to go now is let's work on really getting, you're still volume blending the shades, but you haven't given me the individual elements. Like, you're still doing it largely with your airbrush for those effects. I need you to get in there with the brush. We got to lose that fear because I need dark lines here. I need a highlight, you know, coming down here and here, all the way up here. You know what I mean? Like, I need that kind of directional lighting and shading to really sell me on the overall effect. But I like your colors. So you're doing really well. Just want to see a little more of that. So, okay. But overall, really great, man. I love it. I love to see it. I want to see more from this. This force is super coming along. Can't wait to see more stuff from you, Reinhardt. Well done. That brings us to the end of the month. So, with that, we are all done with the review. I will say thank you to everybody who submitted. All of the work this month was absolutely fantastic, as it is every month. I'm so overjoyed getting to review these pieces. I love seeing people post month after month, like Reinhardt there at the end, and watching that improvement. I mean, that made my evening, man, right? And I saw that so many times throughout for people who've shared multiple times as I watch people take these steps on their hobby journey. It's wonderful. So thank you all for being brave enough to share your stuff. I hope all my feedback is taken in the most constructive way possible. You are all absolute heroes and champions for being willing to put yourself out there, to share it, to get feedback. It is a scary thing to do, and nothing is better for helping you get the next step on your hobby journey. So fantastically well done work to everybody. If you want to join us on the journey, like I said, link is in the description to the PmP. We would love to have you no matter where you're at. But as always, as I'm recording this, the September event is already up. So hopefully we'll see some stuff posted there. But as always, I thank you very much for watching this one, and we'll see you next time.